Yeah, we are live. We can start.
Okay.
Amigos in Mexico, mga kaibigan sa Pilipinas, welcome to the fourth episode of La Historia Olvidada. I'm your host and moderator, Ralph Roldan of the Philippine Embassy. We remind our attendees to turn off their audio throughout the session. An open forum will be held towards the end of the session. You may leave your questions in the chat box. So before we start, we would like to call the Philippine ambassador to Mexico for the welcome remarks.
Good evening. Good morning to all our participants present in this event, including those who are joining us via our YouTube channel. I would like to welcome you all to the fourth episode of La Historia Olvidada Filipinas-México 2024. Last month, our speaker, Mr. Eder Gallegos, talked on the significance of port defense during the era of early globalization, focusing on the vital maritime routes between Manila and Mexico, which shaped the defense strategies of Manila and Mexico as crucial nodes in the global trade network of the 16th to 18th centuries. For the fourth episode, our resource speaker, Mr. Ricardo Pinzon, a PhD student and independent researcher, will talk on the genetics of the early modern Transpacific world. To our new participants, this initiative started in October last year with the aim to highlight pivotal events and contents that have shaped the engagements between the Philippines and Mexico, spanning from the 16th century to the contemporary period. Likewise, to elevate scholarly, diplomatic, and cultural exchanges between the Philippines and Mexico, and to understand the role of the Manila-Acapulco galleons in shaping relations and pioneering global trade. On behalf of the Embassy of the Philippines in Mexico, allow me to express my sincerest appreciation to our distinguished guest speaker for this episode, Mr. Pison, as well as to our co-organizers, Dr. Cristil Obispado of the University of the Philippines, Diliman, Dr. Tomas Calvillo of El Colegio de San Luis, and Dr. Ivan Valdez-Buvnov of the Philippine-Mexico Studies Program based at the Universidad Nacional Autónoma de Mexico. Once again, welcome and thank you very much for your participation. Maraming salamat po. Muchas gracias a todos. Mabuhay.
Thank you, Ambassador. We wish to acknowledge the presence of Undersecretary Eduardo Jose de Vega, Minister Counselor and Consul General Rodrigo C. Atienza of the Philippine Embassy in Budapest, Minister Counselor Francisco Javier de la Cruz of the Dominican Republic in Mexico, our Honorary Consul Francisco Cue and Consul Camarena, who are also with us at the Zoom. We would also like to acknowledge the presence of the members of the diplomatic corps in Mexico, representatives from other government offices in Mexico, professors and students from the Philippines and Mexico. Thank you very much for your participation. To introduce the speaker, let me call on Third Secretary and Vice Consul Marisa Winkler.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. I am pleased to introduce our speaker. He is a PhD student and independent researcher. He has a master's degree in education from the University of the People from Pasadena, California, USA. He has published several books such as The Warriors Pinson of Guerrero and Their Legacy in the History of Mexico, The Warriors Pinson de Guerrero, A Filipino Family at War, and he has delivered several lectures and webinars on the same topic that he will be presenting to us at the University of the Philippines, Diliman History Department, Philippine Academic Consortium, the Latin America Studies, and the University of Santo Tomas Political Science Department. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome our speaker, Mr. Ricardo Pinzon. Thank you.
Maraming salamat. Let me share my screen. Can you see the screen, everybody?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, then it's somehow it stopped. Okay. Thank you.
Ready.
Okay. Salamat. Muy agradecido con la Embajada de Filipinas por haberme invitado. Me da mucho gusto ver a todos ustedes. I am very happy to have this opportunity to share some of the findings of my 30-year-long project in Mexico, and recently with my visit in the Philippines and my dedication to the genetic background of the Transpacific world. La Historia Olvidada, it is a very good theme for this series of webinars and conferences, because definitely I have always felt that this part of the history has been forgotten, not only in the Philippines, but also in Mexico. Mexico and the Philippines, we share a lot of things, and we are similar in many ways. And most of the ways that we're similar are very positive. And one of these ways is that in Mexico, a lot of people do not know about our ancient past, and the same thing happens in the Philippines. So I hope during the next 50 minutes, I can surprise you, and I can prove to you how we are connected. The 4 points that I would like to make clear today is that I want to provide a brief framework of the Trans-Pacific world, revisit the issue on the Filipino-Asian mindset of Spain being the sole cultural source on the other end of the ocean for the Filipinos, give a brief introduction to the somatic DNA testing that I do and its relationship to the history of the Trans-Pacific world, provide solid facts on how we are all genetically related thanks to this galleon system. I want to provide you with a brief history of how the world was before 1565. Many of you know about this, but definitely this is dedicated to the ones who are first interested in this topic. And you have to be aware that before the turnaround trip between Puerto de Navidad and Cebu in the Philippines had already maritime relations with China, Vietnam, Japan, Korea, Malaysia, India, England, Holland, and even Spain through the old Silk Route. Well, the same thing happens with Mexico. Mexico, before the discovery of the turnaround for the Manila-Acapulco galleon system, Mexico had naval relationships with Peru, Chile, Ecuador, Colombia, Central America through the Pacific Corridor. So in 1565, the turnaround was discovered, and throughout 250 years, the galleon system or the lanao and el galeon went back and forth about 2, 3, 4 times or 3, 4 ships per year. And during the last years, it was just one single one on one way and the way back. With the combined millions of tons of silver, silk, spices, porcelain, ivory, seats, lacquerware, fans, chests, screens, fabrics, and other luxurious goods carried on the galleon back and forth all over the Pacific Ocean, there is a main question that I see people asking other panelists when they talk about the history of the Trans-Pacific galleon system. And the question is, what happened? What were the stories and what are the whereabouts of its thousands of sailors, soldiers, and slaves who made this amazing travel system work? Well, in this map, I want to show you that in the blue arrow, you can see Spain there, the tiny Spain with its civilians and several thousand soldiers that needed to spread throughout their territories. And you can imagine how hard it was for Spain to cover all those territories. Very hard. So another thing that I want you to remember or to learn tonight is that in 1519 through 1525, the Spanish conquistadores defeated the Aztecs, and they started providing encomiendas to all soldiers to the conquered territories within Mexico. Just about 20 years later, you have to guess or imagine that the first generations of criollos are born in Mexico. And this means that the first sons and daughters of those Spanish men and few women, they started having offsprings, and now we have the first criollos or the first Mexicans. By the year 1560 and 1565, there's a second generation of criollos or mestizos that are born in Mexico. So by the period between 1565 and 1595, when Nueva España, which is actually Mexico, starts the absolute control of the Filipinas, second, third, and fourth generation of Mexicans are being sent overseas to Cebu and Manila to serve as soldiers, servants, and slaves. So this is La Historia Olvidada, that for about 250 years, it was the Mexican authorities and the Mexican people mostly who were sent to work and live in Las Filipinas. And of course, we do not forget that the main officers, lieutenants, colonels, majors, generals, those were certainly of Spanish-born men. In these maps, you can see the Pacific Ocean to the south. In those regions in color orange, that is what we call the Costa Grande. In yellow, it's Acapulco. And in kind of reddish, that is the Costa Chica. And all that is part of Guerrero and the state of Oaxaca as well. So from Acapulco, it was a sign that the galleon was going to sail to Manila once a year, and then Acapulco was going to receive the galleon also around the late months of every year. So when we started thinking about DNA testing, the first biologists and microbiologists and geneticists who started testing the DNA in the world, they started working with the haplogroups and the haplotypes. And this specific DNA testing can trace your ancestors back thousands of years, 5, 10, 25, 30 thousands of years. So we have a laboratory in Mexico, Langevio, whose director is Juan Esteban Rodriguez. He has spearheaded several important DNA testing projects in Mexico, and they have been creating their own banks and using previous banks that were built or made by European and US laboratories when they were testing peoples from around the world. So they were able to compare the DNA from Mexicans, and they were able to tell if they had a background from Africa or from Asia, but pinpointing thousands of years back. And the reason I'm telling you this is there will be a difference between the haplotype testing that the major labs do and the very humble testing that I do with the new residential homemade DNA testing. The commercial over-the-counter DNA kits over the years have started to come down in price. They are more accessible to anybody, and they are even mailing this test from the U.S. to Mexico and I believe South America. A lot of Filipino people are testing there and in the United States as well. So I'm going to give you a brief introduction of how the somatic DNA test works. For this, you have to keep in mind that we all come from a father and a mother. That's 1 + 1 = 2, and so we get half of our DNA from our father and half of, or about 50% from the mother. And then if we think about our grandparents, which are 4, we get about 25% from each of them. And then we think about our bisabuelos or great grandparents, then we get about 12% from each of them, and so forth until the 11th generation, where we get about 0.05%. So the somatic DNA testing does not go back thousands of years, but for the project that we're working on, this DNA testing is very important because it goes back the furthest about 250 years back, which is precisely and exactly the era of the Manila Galleon, the era of the Transpacific galleon system that we're interested in. Another example, so we can get familiar with this idea of DNA testing. If you have a father from Spain and a mother from Mexican, so you have a 50% Spanish DNA and a 50% Mexican native DNA. Let's say you have a grandfather from Spain and a grandmother from Filipinas and a grandfather from Mexico native and a grandmother from Africa and Nigeria. Then you will have a quarter of each, 25%. Are you following? Let's continue. So in life, we are more used to looking for the biggest, the greatest, the largest, the most. If it's happiness, if it's love, if it's money, if they are possessions, or if they are fun times, we want the most. So we, like in the TV screen, we go from 30 DPI and we want more. We go 60 DPI or 100 DPI. We go from megabytes to gigabytes to terabytes. Here I want you to focus and understand that for this project, we are not looking for the greatest. We are looking for a footprint. We are looking for a speckle of this tiny dot here, that to find that will make us happy. That will make us our time and effort worth. So it's not the greatest, but it's not 100%. But if we can find 1% of something that we're looking for in a DNA sample, then we made it. We feel we have conquered the world. So how does this work? Of several hundred participants who have volunteered to share their DNA, I have gotten DNA kits from the 4 major genealogy houses or corporations, which is, you might be familiar with Ancestry, 23andMe, Family Tree DNA, and MyHeritage DNA. And also, how have people volunteered? Because through my ethnographic immersion, I have met, gotten acquainted, and made friends with hundreds and hundreds of people throughout the years. So they have trusted me when I asked them, hey, can you, if you have a DNA test result, can you share it with me? And a lot of people might have said no because they haven't replied, but several hundred have replied. And through social media and through genealogy societies, they have said yes. So through for the past 10 years, they have been sharing DNA tests with me. I'm going to share with you some of those DNA testing samples, and those are the ones that people gave me the permission to share them with you. But also, I want to stress out that these testings and all the results are always confidential, and they are anonymous. So we share what the volunteer friends and people have agreed to. I have a few questions at this moment. Were you born in Asia, America, Europe, Oceania, or Africa? I ask you. If you have a researcher's mind, have you ever asked yourself, what are your immediate origins? Where are your great-grandparents from? Another question is, how much were you or are you willing to bet that a DNA test will not surprise you? Do you consider yourself a hardcore native or a citizen of the world? Well, for instance, in Mexico, which I am most familiar with because I grew up there, for decades, the idea of being a mestizo is that we were conquered by Spain, so we must be 50-50. We are 50% Spanish, we are 50% native. But when we do DNA testing, thanks to that, we know that that's not the truth. Here are two examples that have been formatted, that they have been edited in its form way to be shared with you. We have this person who is 97% native and 1% Spanish. And this laboratory points out or highlights that is from the region of Basque, los Vascos, que contribuyeron mucho en soldados y colonizadores when they came to Mexico. On this other example, we can see a 96% native, 1% Spain, 2% from Basque, and even it shows a 1% from Africa. When I started doing DNA testing, I have discovered that the Mexican Pacific coast has probably the richest DNA in America. That is my argument, and I stand for that. Here I am with my cousin's adorable Xoloscuintle dog, and I ask you again, do I look Filipino to you? Do I resemble a Malay Sinoy to you? When you first see me, when you see my face, can you tell where I am from? Can you tell that I am an Aztec or a Mixteco or an Apache, perhaps? Can you tell? Well, let me share with you my DNA, and by doing so, you will probably discover that I am actually a citizen of the world, and I am very proud of that. First, I'm going to point out my Mexican native percentage, and as you can see, it's about 30%. And over here, you can see I'm 3% from Yucatan. Or I have actually a great-great-grandparent from that area. And that is part of the galleon system history about people moving around and bringing people from Central America and from the Yucatan Peninsula to the Pacific. Next slide, you can see that I'm European. I'm about 21% from Spanish great-grandfathers. I am Basque. I have a grandparent from Ireland. I am also Jewish. I'm Portuguese, and I found out through experience and through looking at hundreds of these samples that 99% of Spanish conquistadores, they bring the North African gene, which is the area of Morocco and Libya and Argel, because they also had 800 years of Arabian North African history. And I'm also German. Next slide. Well, I'm proud to be African. I'm not really that black, but I'm proud to be African. And as you can see, I'm 9% from Senegal and about 2% Cameroon and Mali and Nigeria East Central. And this could mean two possibilities, that I have several great grandparents from those areas, or you have to keep in mind that also Africa, back then during the Manila Galleon system and the slave trade, there were no countries. So Africans were a mix of several tribes as well. So that's part of the fantastic discoveries and findings of the Transpacific Galleon world. And then finally, I am an Asian, and I'm very proud of that too. You can see here I am 6% from northern Philippines, 3% from the south. That could be Iloilo and Cebu. And I'm also Chinese, 2% southern China. And I'm Indian. You see the 1% over here, and southwestern China too. This is my wife's Lupita DNA, and as you can see, if I can point out that I am not special, I am not unique, because thousands and thousands of Mexicans from the coast have this wide variety of colors in the DNA. So you can see my wife, which we did a different genealogy testing. She also has about the same different ancestors from Africa, Europe, and Asia, and native Mexico. So now I'm going to show you some of the samples from other countrymen and other paisanos de la Costa Grande, de la Costa Chica de Guerrero. You can see this person is at least 50% native and 15% from Spain. But here you see the 1% from northern Philippines and 4% from southern. So remember, we're not looking at 100%. If we can find that 1%, that makes our day. This example number 2, you will see the Philippines down here in 2%, and there's also Portuguese, which is also some part of the mixture of the conquistadores. Example 3, this person has 13%. And remember, well, not that you remember that, I can tell you that there were certain towns in Costa Grande that were mostly populated by Filipino settlers. So this person has not only 1, but 2, 3, 4 great grandparents from the Philippines. That's why it has a high percentage. And example number 4, you can see 3%, but at the bottom, you will see that it has 1% from a special tribe in China that here is labeled as Dai, and also from southern India. So we also have, because of the Transpacific Galleon system, it wasn't only about Acapulco and Manila, but it was about all the major ports in the Pacific coast in America and in Asia. And in America, because there were some goods being sent through the galleon system from South America, mainly silver, but also cacao for the chocolate. So this person in Costa Grande, Costa Chica, Guerrero has a Chilean ancestry because of the Chileans that came to live to Mexico. The Transpacific galleon was a global phenomenon that affected every port where it docked. Now, what happens in the Philippines? Well, Mexicans went to the Philippines, and they were not ghosts. They were not like statues that got there, saw, work, and died. They were the same humans as all of the humans that participated in this adventure, that wanted to have company, to have a family. So Mexicans in the Philippines also had their families, and you see this Filipino with 1% Mexican here. And example number two, another person that tested with 1% Mexican. And of course, I mean, I would like to talk about how some Filipinos, they believe that they are 100% Filipinos, but it is not true, because back in the day, back 200 years ago, there was fortunately a mix between the Chinese diaspora and the Indian ships that made it to the Philippines, and the Malay and Indonesian and the Vietnamese. Let me show you more. We have another Filipino person here with 75% from the north and 14% from Guam. And then India, it has Spain, it has Sweden, and it has Mexico right here. And on my right hand side, another person with 1% Mexico, and so forth, with my very poor tools, methods, and resources. I have about 200 Filipino samples with Mexican descent. Imagine what I could do if I had the big sponsorships. But I'm not looking for sponsorships. I invite the universities of in Manila, and the Ateneo and the Santo Tomas to jump into into a project like this one, so we can find out more the richness of the Asian DNA world. Let's see what's next. So when I saw this, I was thrilled. I went crazy, because a lot of Mexico has, unbelievably, for today's Mexicans, which ignore this history, is like Historia Olvidada. They have no idea how many Mexicans with Peruvian blood are, because from the El Callao, there was another galleon that made it to Acapulco. But also those Peruvians bordered in Acapulco going to Philippines. So we have this Filipino person with 1% Peruvian ancestry. And we have, I have several examples to show you, motivate, and excite my Filipino counterparts about how the variety of their DNA. You see the Bengal here, which represents Sri Lanka and Bangladesh and southern India. And another example over here, that you have the Malay and Indonesia at the bottom. And how many or more than half of the Filipino population have Chinese DNA. So there is a fraternity there, brotherhood, sisterhood. Here's another example. I wanted to point out the Korean background of this Filipino person with 93%. But there's a Korean great-grandfather there in the mix. Isn't that interesting? On the other side, I want to point out how people from Europe were coming on the galleons or on their ships towards the Philippines. You know, people Denmark wanted to have a say so in the Transpacific world, and in England as well. So you see that percentage in the mix of a Filipino person. And then we have here, I have a lot of these. I mean, I can go on another hour showing you different examples of the DNA that has been shared to me or that I have personally have been testing. This one is from Vietnam, 2%. And here we have from Germany, from Italy, that also there were sellers and merchants from those countries coming to the Philippines during the Trans-Pacific era. And here we have 100% up here in between Philippines and Chinese background, but we have a 1% from Sweden. And over here, now we go back to a example from Guerrero, where we have a 1% from Colombia. So all the countries in America that were in the Pacific and that wanted to be part of the commercial trade, they came to Mexico and they left their DNA footprint there for us to see 200 years later. And well, I don't know if I went too fast, that I have finished. How are we going on time?
We're on time, sir. You may proceed. Yes.
Maybe I was going too fast, but hopefully we can spend more time answering questions or comments.
Sir Ralph?
Okay. All right. So that was an interesting, really presentation on the many things about, I mean, and genetics. I think all of us here are taking somehow like a crash course on genetics, right? I suppose, no? And as as you progress with your presentation, I can't help but also think that not only did we bring mangoes, coconuts, cockfighting into Mexico, but we left something else, and perhaps like a good number of people in Mexico probably have Philippine genes, right? So that was interesting. But what made you? What made you did mention that you wanted to prove that the coast of Mexico contains a very rich genetic makeup. Other than that, do you have other particular interests in determining the genetics of the people living in Mexico?
Yes, what happens is that Mexico has been written the recent story about natives and Europeans and Spanish. And then there is a great struggle to have the third root recognized in Mexico, which are the Africans. And I have been doing a lot of field work in the Pacific coast, and I noticed that the people have Asian features. So I've been doing work at the archivals, and and I have found some information, but still not enough. And then I realized I kind of invented, if that's the word, or came up with the idea of doing DNA testing for this project. And definitely when I started getting the results, I started getting answers, but I also started getting confirmation that my hypotheses were truth, and that we look Asian, we look Filipino, we look Malay, because we have it in our blood. And this work has a lot of ramifications. At this point, I have not been able to include, because of time-wise, all the results that I've gotten from Mexico City. I have a lot of residents in Mexico City with Filipino blood. I'm doing another research on the state of Guanajuato, which is believed to have another Filipino community. But that might be part of another session that I would like. I will likely be happy to share with you.
Thank you, sir. I think Mr. Francisco Cue has a question. Yes, sir, please.
Yeah, I have a question. As I understand this, all of these results are after the conquer and after, or more or less in the same age of the galleon trade. Do you have any sample before? I mean, for the Filipinos before the Spaniards came, and from Mexicans before the conquer? I mean, to see, because as I understand, Mexicans came from China originally. Then I am surprised not to see more Chinese DNA in the analysis that you presented. Then what happened before?
Yes, certainly. What happens is that the somatic DNA can only go back 200, 250 years ago. It cannot go further back. But on the other hand, we do have, or Mexican has already results on the haplotypes of the Mexicans, and I can gladly share with you the links to those results, because definitely there are some that tell about the people crossing through the Bering Strait to the north of America and to Mexico, all the way down to Argentina and La Patagonia. And definitely there are results available, and I will be happy to share those with you and anybody who's interested. But that corresponds to a different type of DNA testing.
Thank you. Muchas gracias, Ricardo.
Un placer.
Should you have questions, please feel free to write them in the chat box, or you may please press the raise button hand. We have Mr. Rodrigo Lopez Portillo. Yes, please, you may have the mic.
Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. A very, very interesting talk, and I congratulate Mr. Ricardo for his great investigation that only demonstrates that humans, we are one of a kind. No, we are everyone. We are related with everyone in a different percentage. But this at the end, we are citizens of the world. So it's very outstanding, the presentation, and I'm very happy to be here at the Zoom meeting. And just the first was a congratulation comment, and the second one is that thanks to some investigations that have been done, because we have an ancestor who went to the Philippines and from Mexico went to the Philippines and then come back to Mexico again in the 18th century. Not just the galleon did the route. There were smaller boats, some of them called paque boats, and other different boats smaller than the galleon, that also did the route from Acapulco to Manila, and they make the first stop. They make a first stop in San Jose del Cabo, which have a spring, a clear water spring. So all the first stop from the route from Manila to Acapulco must be done in San Jose del Cabo. Unfortunately, I have been there sometimes, and I tried to do some research about that. And people in San Jose del Cabo and other places in South Baja California don't have any clue about that. They were like, "Really? Are you sure? Oh my God, that's incredible, no?" I mean, there are a lot of information, but unfortunately, people in that part of South Baja California, they think more in American tourism and nowadays things than that is very, very important that to just put yourself to doing the trip, and then you have to finally, after some months of traveling and suffering many things, to have the first stop to have a nice bath, to have fresh food, etc. No, and there was another second stop at San Blas. Once they organized the port of San Blas in the passing the middle of the 18th century, there was a second short stop at San Blas, so many people can go down over there and for the merchandise, and people who didn't want to go to Acapulco and the last stop was Acapulco, of course, but as well. I will recommend Mr. Ricardo that following those routes of the galleon, if you do some investigation in South Baja California, probably you will find as well interesting results, because I mean, every human, I was traveling in the galleon or in other small boats, and then get down from the boat in South Baja California, in San Jose, and then I met a beautiful lady, local lady. Maybe I got in love and I got married and I stay there, or just have children or whatever. So probably broad your investigation and have a small holiday in the South Baja California. Could be nice, and probably you will find interesting results over there. And also in the state of Nayarit, in the coast of Nayarit, in the Pacific coast of Nayarit, which is nowadays is also a touristic place, north Nuevo Vallarta, and all that places that have been developing in the north part of Puerto Vallarta, which is nowadays Nayarit. You will find good surprises over there as well in Puerto Vallarta. I mean the Pacific coast of Jalisco and Nayarit, as well, of course, Michoacán. You already mentioned it, Michoacán and Guerrero, of course, and that's also. Thank you very much for your talk. It was super interesting. Many congratulations. I will look forward for the embassy to organize another talk with Mr. Ricardo, which has been very, very interesting. So a great applause. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Well, thank you, Mr. Rodrigo, for that question. Would you like to respond, Mr. Ricardo?
Oh, just actually, I agree with him, and I'm happy that he was here with us. Definitely, there were smaller boats, los paquebotes, and they made the way back and forth at the beginning, and then follow the route all the way from Northern California to Los Cabos, and like Rodrigo very well he said, to Barra de Navidad and el Puerto de Salagua and Colima, and yes, it is very important to hear these stories and to write them down, to share them, because there are still more people in the Philippines and the rest of Asia and in Mexico and Latin America that we're part of this history, and that we have to not to forget them. Actually, I want to add at this moment that part of my thesis that I'm working on is this time I'm gonna put names and last names to the Filipinos that participated in the history of Mexico.
Mhm. Wow, that sounds to be a very interesting endeavor. I will hope you'll be able to do that. We have here a question from Mr. Daniel Ching. The findings clearly show how we are connected, no? And he congratulates you, Mr. Ricardo. His question is, what challenges did you encounter in completing your study?
Well, the main challenge is that 99% of the people doing research, they are sponsored and they have economic help, and it's just me. But I have never complained. But to answer the question, it's just from the money I get from my quincenas. So it's that's very difficult. Otherwise, um, being out there in the field, I am a mochilero. I travel by myself. I sleep on the floor. I eat beans or lumpias. That should do it for the day. So I even though there's usually people who do not want to help you, but there are a lot more people that are willing to help you, and I have made a lot of friends in the Philippines and in the academic here in Mexico. So the challenges have been overcome by the strength of all of us being united.
Mhm. Yeah, my next question is there an actual interest among Mexicans to determine their genealogical lineage?
Yes, there is, because the number one thing that drives most of them is curiosity. So they are curious, and then when they see the results, most of them are surprised, because if you're a Mexican doing a test, you will say, "Hey, I will be probably a lot percent European, a tiny bit of native," but then they will see that they are the reverse. They are more native than European, and that they even have African ancestry, which this is probably kind of a commercial, but I have to do it. I what I'm doing is I'm throwing my net into the ocean, looking for the Asian ancestry. But since I'm throwing the net, for sure I'm gonna pick up a lot of stuff that is not precisely that, but all that other stuff, every single thing, it's just great for the project. And for instance, just to be more specific, people believe that Africans in Mexico, they are in very small parts of Costa Chica and Tabasco, Veracruz. Many people in the academia do not know, and I have the results in my hand, do not know that over 60% of Mexicans are of African descent. The majority of Mexicans, and people at the UNAM and Colegio de San Luis and uh, the other universities have no idea about how many Mexicans have African blood.
Mhm. Oh, interesting. Oh, we have here. I think Mr. Mark Ritchie Socius would like to ask a question. Yes, please.
Thank you, Sir Ralph. Right. So I'm Celsius po from the Philippines, and currently I'm in China and about culture. So, Sir Ricardo, thank you so much. I just want to commend because as an individual who has been engaged in social science research, I really find this commendable, no? Because you use hard science to support your hypothesis pertinent to social phenomena. However, sir, I have two questions. Now, the first one is I'm curious of the methodology. Why do we classify percentages according to nation state constructs rather than, let's say, racial? for example, Caucasoid, Mongoloid, and etc. Because to do so, nation states are like presented like monolithic entities. It's as if identity is not layered. So that's my first question, because it caught my curiosity, especially when you presented about that Peruvian case, no? So there's that categorization about Ireland, and I see a lot about the Philippines, Southern, Northern, but these are constructs of a nation state. So number two, how do you think will your study and findings impact citizenship policies in the future? Because countries are still operating as states, but of course other citizens, other prospect citizens may claim that, oh, I have this blood based on my DNA and blah blah blah. What do you think are the impacts of your study to future citizenship policies? Thank you.
Maraming salamat. Muchas gracias for your question. Two questions. Number one, yes, I agree with you. I went really fast, and it's very important. I'm glad you're giving me the opportunity to explain that. First of all, most of us or all of us agree that there are no races, right? Black and white and blue and yellow. And definitely, these tests are not perfect. They are giving me an idea because, of course, back then there were no countries. Now there are countries. And I say somebody has Peruvian ancestry, which is referring to people that tribes that have that DNA that is being compared in the bank and of the person being testing for that region. But of course, it is at the same time not absolutely official or certain that yes, you are Peruvian and you're not Bolivian, because the testing says you are from Peru. But those labels gives us just a better idea. But definitely those labels are not for something that we can die for. And trying to answer to your second question, my take, Mark, is that in the world there's a lot of nationalism, like this is us and nobody else is really welcome because we own this and we are the masters of this. And I think that the angle that I have, Mark, is that this tells us that we are all related. Like in my case, I was born in Mexico some decades ago, and that my parents and my grandparents, they are Mexicans. But I'm happy to do the DNA test, and I'm happy that I am Asian and that I'm African and that European. But not to be repetitive, I want to point out, Mark, that there's also a very interesting discussion here for all of us, because I am about 15% Filipino, and then I tell some people, perhaps in the Philippines, hey, I'm Filipino, and they say, no, you're not. You don't speak the language. You don't eat the food we eat, and you haven't been in the Philippines, so you are not. And then you're not Spanish, or you're not Jewish, or you're not Black, or you're not African. And here comes the interesting question that brings us another debate. Okay, so what do I need to be Filipino? What is the percentage that I need to be? Do I need to sing the national anthem? Do I need to eat 200, 300 lumpias? What will make me Filipino? I have it in my blood, but you don't recognize that I am Peruvian or that I am a citizen of the world. So what is going to take for all of us to feel brothers and sisters instead of trying to find the differences? I hope that answers a little bit your questions, Mark.
Yes, sir, Ricardo, and that's thought-provoking. Thank you so much, sir. Congratulations.
Mhm.
Un placer.
We have a question in the chat box. Would you know if there's similar somatic DNA testing in the former Spanish colonies like the Philippines? to determine genetic heritage from Europe, or do you think it is possible as a possible area of research that may have uses beyond? Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yes. Couldn't read. Would you be able to answer that, sir? Does it have other uses?
Uses beyond the
Actually,
I said.
yes, this question is from Eden,
Yes.
right? Okay. Yeah, if I understood the question correctly, actually, the somatic testing, you will find out probably right now that this is my quote unquote invention, because the somatic testing it was done with the idea of genealogy, of see who are your cousins and your second cousins, your third cousins and uncles. So it was about looking for family. But I was looking at this tool and I said, I can give this tool another purpose. So that's what I've been doing. I believe so far nobody's doing something like this anywhere else. So to answer the question, this testing, yes, has other purposes, and the main purpose is to find lost cousins. That's the main one, and you can get it there. There are corporations in Europe and in the United States. They can mail this to you, and you can drop a few drops of pour a few drops of saliva into a tube, and in 2 months you get the results.
Mhm. Yes, and there's a question from Mr. Vincent John Ruiz. Were you able to conduct tests in other Central American countries and further south? If so, were there traces of Filipino settlers in those parts?
Excellent question, Vincent. I want to do those, but with my limited resources, I haven't been able, but I'm looking for those because of the connection. I think I have 2 or 3 samples, yes, but I want more, and I have to adapt to the circumstances. So since I cannot travel to Central America, I have to meet with my friends that are from Central America that we can do testing. But so far, it hasn't been that much, but I am working on that, and I promise that I should have results soon.
Mhm. So there's a question posed earlier. Based on a DNA test of Miss Universe 2020 Andrea Mesa from Mexico, part of her DNA originated from Southeast Asia. How common is Asian ancestry among Mexicans?
It may sound like a repetitive question, but no, it gives. Thank you, whoever made that question. Thank you very much. It gives me the opportunity to say that at this moment, my preliminary results tell me that the Filipino ancestry on a conservative percentage is about 5% of the Mexican population, and it's spread out through Guerrero, Michoacán, Colima, Jalisco, and Sinaloa, and a little parts of Sonora, Mexico City, Puebla, part of Oaxaca, and possibly part of Guanajuato. I'm working on that.
Mhm. Interesting. Also, the spread is quite vast. How perhaps the Filipinos of olden days were able to spread their seeds, if you may say so. What does this say about the Mexican society? Does it mean they were open to what do you call this, intermarriages with foreigners? If that can that be said of Mexicans during that time?
Well, the conditions were that many of the so-called second-class Mexicans, they were not allowed to marry to the Spanish women and the Criollo women, but they had no problem intermarrying with Native and African men and women, because ultimately back in those days what women needed, it was the support of a man to provide for the house. And back in those days it was about gunfights and revolution and war, so they needed a man to take care of them, and then also men needed a woman to take care of the house, and the needs of men and women to form families.
Interesting. Do you have other questions in the room? Or no? Okay, so it's what do you what do you intend to achieve when you're finally are you seeing the end of your study? And if so, how do you think it's going to turn out?
Thank you. Another great question, because the end of the study is to publish it and to let the people in academia in Mexico and the Philippines and other parts of the world the results of these findings and how we are interconnected and how the fourth root in Mexico exists. And also during the past national census in 2020, for the first time, there was an option for Mexicans to check the African ancestry box. So my goal is, during the next couple of years, approach the Congress so they can add the Filipino-Malay box or Asian box to the national census, so people can start realizing that we have the fourth root, and also feeling proud of being of a Chinese, Filipino, Malay, Indian.
Thank you. Ambassador Lilibet de Pera, you have the mic.
Yes, thank you, Sir Ricardo, disculpe. I'm just curious, in one of your studies, there was a distinction between a northern South Filipino or northern Filipino. How do you distinguish the DNA of someone from the south and from someone in the north of the Philippines? I mean, is there a difference?
Yes, gracias por preguntar. This company, let's talk about Ancestry. Ancestry started testing about 10 or so years. So back then, they had a bank of other tests done by great labs. And when they started getting the first people of Filipino ancestry, they said, hey, this strip of DNA or of chromosomes, this is similar to this other strip that comes from the Philippines. So these people are from the Philippines, the whole country. And then more and more Filipinos started testing until there were 3,000, 5,000. So they started to see, hey, a lot of this commonalities come from this part of Luzon, and these other people that we are testing, they are very common from Cebu, the Visayas, Iloilo or Cebu, and other people now are from Mindanao. So throughout the years, the more and more they have people testing, they can pinpoint, and this happened just within the past 12 months, Ambassador, that they were able to pinpoint the north, the center, and the south. And probably in about maybe 5 years or 6, they will be able to point the north of Luzon and the south of Luzon. But that's how it works also in Mexico. Before it was southern Mexico, but now they are able to pinpoint and say, Guerrero and Mexico, these people, and the Central and the North, because of the more people testing.
Yeah, all right. Thank you. Just a reminder to all the people here. Please later on check out the evaluation. Please click on that link to give your comments. Another question, Mr. Ricardo. A quick look at say Wikipedia or Google Filipinos in Mexico would yield to some interesting results, such as some popular Filipinos, some popular Mexicans who claim to have Philippine roots. One in particular is the former governor Maganda in Guerrero. Would you have any information about this?
Yes, I do. That has been a major topic, and I do have DNA from this family. 10, 15, 20 years ago, it has been very uncomfortable for most of the people to say, hey, I am not European. I could be a little bit African or maybe Filipino, but they have been very reluctant to say so. So just recently, this has been growing, and thanks to the effort of the Embassy of the Philippines in Mexico and the La UNAM, more and more people are starting to get the idea that we are a multicultural society. But for these family, because I know the family that they have been reluctant, I have told some of the members, hey, I have proved that you are of Filipino ancestry. So definitely I know about that, and we have the facts and the proofs, the biological proofs to say that it's true.
Mm. And also a namesake of yours, a certain general Pinson also is in the list. And if you do a quick search in Wikipedia, would you tell us something about that if you could?
Yes, I've been doing my own genealogy search, and the father of the father of the father of the father of all my fathers came from the Philippines. So I've been trying to find my family over there. There are some documents that say he came from Iloilo, and other documents that he came from Manila. So there are Pinzon family over there, but I'm almost certain that it's not by the Pinzon last name, because Pinzon is also mainly from Spain, from the Puerto de Palos and Huelva, and I have been there too. But it could be a different last name, but I'm looking for my family in the Philippines. I think I have a lot of cousins there.
And a lot of Ricardos too. Yeah. So it's very, very interesting. Any more questions you'd like to ask our speaker here? We have a few more minutes before we leave. All right. I have a naughty question. You see, in the Philippines, seafarers have quite a reputation for siring children in every port they go to. Do you think that was the case for the spread of Philippine genes during those times?
No, I don't think so. It was 200 years ago. It was a different situation.
Okay, good to hear. Good to hear. Thank you very much. All right, I think we can end it there, and would like to hear your comments. Please click on the link in the chat box there for your comments, suggestions, and your evaluation for tonight's or for this morning's Olvidada episode. So to end, thank you, Mr. Ricardo. We'd like to call on Vice Consul Marisa Winkler for her closing remarks.
Okay. Thank you once again, Mr. Pinzon. That's very interesting topic. Thank you, Sir Ralph, for moderating, and thank you to all our participants. So we hope to see you in our next episode. It will be on June 21. Please and invite your friends. The next topic will be interesting, very interesting as well. Thank you very much, and happy weekend.
Can we have a picture, Ma'am?
Yeah, I forgot the picture. Yes, please turn on your camera for our photo opportunity. Thank you.
And also, I noticed in the chat box that Mr. Pinzon gave his email address. So for those who are still interested to know more about the study and perhaps can contribute also to the database, please contact Mr. Pinzon at PinzonX, right? At
Right.
gmail.com. Yeah. Anyway, can we have the picture?
Yes, can you please open your cameras for the photo opportunity? First panel, 1, 2, 3. One more. Okay, last one. Thank you po. Maraming salamat.
Thank you, Len.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Muchas gracias. Les voy a visitar pronto.
Gracias. Okay, vamos a dejar primero para ustedes pueden, ¿cómo se llama? Hacer la encuesta, ¿no? Can you please, the participants, we would appreciate hearing from you on today's session. There's a question that was raised after we closed the event. Is it true that Lázaro Cárdenas have Filipino ancestry? No sabi.
No, that one I do not know. I still need to look into that, but I don't have proof.
Okay. Anyway.
But is it still being recording?
So yeah, it's still
Oh.
being streamed on YouTube.
Oh.
Arnel, can you turn off the YouTube, please? Thank you.
If it's still recording, I want to say something important now that the ambassador mentioned Lázaro Cárdenas. I believe there are my hypothesis, there are 49% probabilities that the current president of Mexico might have a broader DNA than just Spanish and native Mexican. If he does his DNA or he allows me to do the DNA, there will be some surprises there. Oh, Andrés Manuel López Obrador.
Then he might want to visit the Philippines after he retires, no? If he discovers that he has Filipino blood.
Yes, hopefully.
Yeah.
Sir Arnel,